Ottawa has some unique challenges and some unique opportunities. The city of Ottawa covers about 1,000 square miles, 2,750 square kilometers to be exact. We have 3 rivers and a World Heritage Canal that has been identified as one of the World Heritage Sites by UNESCO. The City of Ottawa is the capital of Canada, and as a result we have about 80,000 federal civil servants in the city, which is balanced very nicely and very delicately with 80,000 members of the technology workforce. 50% of the residents of the City of Ottawa have college degrees or greater, and Ottawa has the highest per capita PhD count for any city in North America other than Boston, Cambridge. We have a long history of entrepreneurship since the early days when Colonel By built the Rideau Canal from 1826 to 1832. He built a 120-kilometer long canal. I think those of you in the municipal environment know that today we could probably not get the environmental assessment through in 6 years. I'm looking forward to chatting with you this morning, Lou, and talking about the city that my great-grandfather came to in 1841, and talk to you about the city that I like to call the most cultured, diverse, entrepreneurial village in the world, the city of Ottawa. So I'll join you now, Lou, and we'll start the conversation.
Welcome,
Lou?
Your Worship.
Pleased to be here.
Please. Well, great to have you. Thank you for making the time to come here, because we know you've got a lot of things going on being mayor of a G8 capital, arguably the most beautiful of them all.
It is such a wonderful place to be, and I invite all members of the audience to come and visit Ottawa over the summer. It is a magnificent place to be.
It sure is. I'd like to start these things by talking a little bit about you, because first of all, I think you're fascinating, and I think you represent a new type of politician at the local level, and that is someone who has experience as a technology CEO, right? And was doing very well, if I may say that. Obviously, you led a company, you built a company, did all the things even people like Mayor Bloomberg do. We see this across the board, but now for some reason you decided to take on snow removal, sewer management, and I just want to ask you, what's different? Why did you do it?
Well, maybe you should probably ask my 2 counselors that question. The reality is, I had spent 25 years building Cali and technology up, from being a one-person consulting company to being a publicly traded $200 million technology services company with systems engineering and technical services being offered to the federal government. And I was just over 50, and there's an old Indian expression that the first 25 years of your life, you get your education, you have your fun. The next 25 years, you raise your family, you build your business, and the third 25 years, you give back to your community. So I was entering that area of wanting to give back to my community, and the opportunity came up to run for public service, and I did, and won the mayor's position. But I can tell you, for those of you from the private sector, it is completely different in public life than it is in the private sector. Mm-hmm. And in the private sector, it's very focused. How do you get your customers to want to pay you a lot of money, yeah, and be anxious to come back and give you more money, yeah, the next time around? Public service, you are really dealing with such a wide array of issues that relate to quality of life, they relate to the future of the city, mm-hmm, that it is infinitely more complex.
It is, and of course, you saw some things happening in Ottawa, probably then the residual effects of it anyway, where you had, effectively a telecom meltdown.
Yes.
You had, I think it was 4 companies producing about 70 or 80% of your jobs, and all of a sudden you had to, preside over the restructuring, if you will, without letting your talent get away, keeping that rich base of invention and the PhDs that you talked about all that amazing intellectual capital that's out there.
Yeah.
Was that something you looked at and said, you know, that's one of the reasons I'm going to do this, and here's how I'm going to do it?
That was part of it. And really, I've never felt more optimistic about the economy in Ottawa as I do today. We had the meltdown of two of our largest companies, JDS and a company called Nortel. But this is the second time Ottawa has been through that cycle. When I first got into the industry in 1971, there was 10 companies in Ottawa that employed 1,500 knowledge workers. One of the major parts of that infrastructure, a company called Microsystems International, went bankrupt. And out of that were spawned a number of small companies. And as those companies became successful, you saw many other entrepreneurs or technology-oriented people jumping into the business and taking advantage of the boom. So between 1971 and today, we went from 10 companies, 1,500 people, to 1,800 companies plus, and 80,000 people. Yeah. So when Nortel obviously started its decline, it's provided Ottawa with a wonderful new opportunity to start small companies and take advantage of that intellectual capital. Yeah. And that's happening. We have a number of, we're starting companies at the rate of about 3 to 5 a week in Ottawa. And they all have the same profile. They're all 3 to 5 people and heavily technology oriented. And they're all going after a piece of that action. So I think it's going to be a very interesting time over the balance of this next decade in the city of Ottawa.
I think so too, and you can feel it when you're up there. But the interesting thing to me was that usually when places lose jobs, people move away, or if you don't have a good retention strategy, they move further away.
Well,
but in your case, I saw some things, and you can elaborate on this, that kept people there. There was certainly a quality of life that was articulated every place I went. But you've also put some mechanisms in place. You've got methods, your Lead to Win program and others, that very specifically are sort of an entrepreneurial factory. Am I right?
You're absolutely right, Lou. I think you've hit the nail right on the head. Ottawa, 90% of the people who live in Ottawa will recommend Ottawa highly or very highly to their friends outside the city as a place to live and to work and to raise your family, which is a tremendous positive to have when you're building an industrial sector. But on top of that, we put, the community has gotten together and we've created both a mentorship program and also a training program for technology-oriented CEOs. And the Lead to Win program, which I think is what you were referring to,
if you can talk about that,
is a wonderful program that takes someone who's got the germ of an idea and puts them through a very structured process over 2 or 3 months, where they get to deal with successful entrepreneurs, university professors, people who know how to make things happen, and they get to be criticized. They get to work with other people. They even have an opportunity to expose their ideas to venture capital and angel capital organizations. And at one point, they have a graduation ceremony. And we've been so lucky in the city of Ottawa. This program has created 80 companies in the city of Ottawa.
And it's kind of a boot camp, isn't it?
It's a boot camp. That's exactly what they call it.
You don't just stay in there forever. Yeah. I was told by Tony, a professor, I can't remember his last name.
Tony Belletti.
Belletti. I should remember that. He's Italian. But he said, this is sink or swim at the end of the day. So you've got this sort of rigorous process for processing these ideas through, yeah? Yeah,
very rigorous, and the people are quite critical. But just like English writing, when you're being critical of English writing, it allows the entrepreneur to see their idea from the vantage point of outside experts.
Right.
And most of the people come through the process just delighted, and the business plan that they had when they went in is quite different than the one that they come out with. Yeah. And it has an inspiring success rate. And out of these 80 or 90 or 100 companies, there'll be a sparkling 1 or 2 that will show the signs of being having the potential to become very large organizations. Yeah,
which is obviously something you need in the modern economy. You need to churn out those ideas.
At the height of the high-tech boom in Ottawa, we had 100,000 employees, and 80,000 employees, and we lost 20. We lost 20,000 employees. We're now back up to 80,000 employees, but the ratio was a little bit different. We lost about 20,000 of the lower paid assembly workers, testing workers. Now that 20,000 employees have been replaced with more engineers, technologists, computer design engineers.
And also R&D. I met with Research in Motion, which I didn't know had an office up there, but they do, and they said, we stay here because these people know how to execute on ideas. They're innovative, they're thinking at a high level about this. So they decided to stay there, and I think they're growing.
Well, it was actually quite interesting why they decided to stay, because they do all of their mobile apps in Ottawa. They have, they have about, I think, 500 or 600 people, 700 people in Ottawa. But they couldn't hire these people to go down to one of the other cities in Canada. The people wouldn't move. So they decided if they couldn't move them into their city, that they would come up and form a very focused development lab in Ottawa. And they did that, and it's been quite successful for them.
Yeah. You know, you mentioned another word which I found to be sort of in the fabric or the DNA up there, which was mentoring. You know, we talked with a couple of young entrepreneurs who were gathered for me. One kid was still a college student. He had $1 million business, providing services to people, washing windows. Literally, that kid was grossing $1 million a year. And he said, I'm a student. He said, I'm going to stay here because I think I can do well. But the one thing he mentioned was the mentoring. He said, yeah, you know, I can bump into the mayor. I can bump into O'Brien on the street, and he'll spend time with me talking about my ideas. And that's very unique, I think, in a big city.
Yeah, we have an entrepreneurial spirit right back from the days of the early lumber barons in the city of Ottawa. J.R. Booth was a lumber baron. He created in Ottawa not just the largest lumber company in Canada, the largest lumber company in the world. And so we've always had that very robust balance of entrepreneurship and government activities. Superstars like the Michael Copelands and the Mike Potters and the Terry Matthews have created targets for people in Ottawa to try and emulate. They've created a model that is successful, and there's nothing succeeds like success. So as more of us see these people and see them becoming successful and driving driving their businesses, it encourages many other people in the city of Ottawa to do the same thing.
But that issue of mentoring, again, I found it very, very, very important in terms of doing all kinds of attraction, psychological attraction, economic attraction, networking. You know, I like to talk and write about the new tribalism, how tribes are reforming, either locally or globally, with the connection of ideas and like-minded interests. There seems to be something, I call it tribal or cultural, where people feel an obligation to mentor there. And it's not forced on them, obviously. Am I perceiving that correctly? Because it does seem to be there.
Yeah, that's an interesting observation. That you know, I never thought of it in terms of being an obligation, but I think people simply enjoy doing it. Yeah. And there's so many young people in our city that are searching for an opportunity to grow a company. That is really something that I personally feel, and I know many of my successful colleagues feel is something that we want to do. Mm-hmm. Because in there is going to be another gem, and you know, aside from the fact that you might be able to get to be able to invest in a company, you also get the satisfaction of seeing another company growing in the region, and you know, we can't have enough of them. I'd like to see you know, Ottawa evolve into becoming the creative capital of Canada, as well as being the political capital of our country.
Yeah, well, I think you're on your way. I mean, I met with some of your aides the first night I was there, and really the whole dinner was about ideas. They were really talking about intellectual ideas, reprocessing education, reprocessing government, reprocessing processing. I mean, it was an extraordinary conversation, and there's an intellectual level there among the political class and others that I found, you know, personally very rewarding.
And we, you know, in mentoring, we have one gentleman in Ottawa, Terry Matthews, who runs he goes into the universities and pulls out the best and brightest, asks them to solve a problem, and then funds the development of their company for the first 6 to 9 months.
And he gives them a piece of the action.
And they get a large chunk of the business. Yeah. So they might make $25,000 a year when coming out of you know, a good university, but they have an opportunity with his close help to create a business. And he often has them come in and live in the basement of his home. Yeah. And slips a pizza under the door every few weeks.
It is the ultimate sweat equity. Yeah.
And they come out of it having, you know, a team of them will come out owning 50, 60, 70% of a company that has potential.
Yeah, that's the Wesley Clover group,
Wesley Clover, yeah.
which I think you went to China with, right?
Yes, one of their guys came to China with us.
And I find that interesting because I met with some of their startups, and there was a company called BBE, which when we were talking yesterday, somebody said there should be a one-button snow day capability on the telecom side, right? Press one button on a snow day and everybody's informed. You know, they were talking about it theoretically. BBE's got that technology. I sat down with their principals, and they said, yeah, we're doing this.
And that's just one idea of thousands that is percolating through the city of Ottawa right now.
Yeah, that's amazing. I'm going to switch to education for a second, because obviously we've been talking about it here, and it's an important component. When I was up there, my fellow New Yorker, Ann Coulter, was there. And she didn't get a chance to speak, fortunately. Actually, I'm being facetious, but she called the University of Ottawa Bush League before she left town. And you know her, she's a firebomber and so forth. But I actually wrote about this, and I said if she could have spent 10 minutes at that university or Algonquin in those places, she'd have had a completely different view of what is happening in terms of capitalism up there, because she's a big advocate, of course, of the capitalist system. And I heard an idea, and I'll let you elaborate on this, a lot of ideas at Algonquin. One of them was something that was, again, raised yesterday conceptually, which was we need to talk about educational packages as 25-year plans, not 4-year degrees, not 2-year degrees, but something that, given the changing nature of jobs, we can do over 25 or 30 years and put a package together. They're thinking about that stuff in places like Algonquin. So,
well, it really has developed into a lifelong learning experience. Certainly in the National Capital Region, people understand that they're going to have to go back and get retrained. They're going to have their skills adjusted 4, 5, 6 times during their life, and we've adopted that as a you might call it an obligation, but I think it's something that is also part of our DNA in Ottawa to keep going. We have 2 really good universities. We have 2 or 3 colleges. We have an enthusiastic group of people who want to continue to get better. I think before I was mayor, I had even taken some courses at Algonquin College still. So I think everyone does it, and I don't see it as something very spectacular because it's normal course in the city of Ottawa.
Yeah. I'm going to go off the course a little bit in terms of what we plan to talk about. I have to ask you, as both a mayor and a man who is successful in leading technology companies, what's your view about Ottawa's educational system? What is it? What would you like to see? Where does it need to go over the next 10 years to continue to incubate this small business sector and balance it, of course, with all the federal largesse and labs that are there?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Because
yeah.
you're trying to create the baseline in education in order to allow the next level of entrepreneurs to succeed. I think more emphasis has to be put on things like digital media, the creative class side of it. Certainly, excuse me, Lou. Certainly what we've seen in Ottawa right now, out of nowhere, 200 digital media companies have sprung up and formed a cluster. And it really wasn't by any direct action by the government or any other organization, but because of the broadband technologies available in the city and the arts community and the programs that were coming out of Carleton University and Algonquin College, this industry sprung up. Whether there be in gaming or I think you went to see Fuel that do some very spectacular special effects and for big U.S. movies.
Well, they're kind of a go-to company for DreamWorks in these.
That's right. Yeah. And when I went to the first cluster meeting, I was really encouraged because back in the 80s when I was starting my technology company, none of us had an exit clause. None of us had an exit strategy for our companies. We all believed we were building companies that were going to last forever. And when I went to talk to these people in the digital media cluster, they were all building a company that they thought was going to provide for them and their families and their employees for the balance of this century. And not one of them, not a single one of them, had an exit strategy. And I thought that was the most encouraging sign yet, that is a wave of the future. Yeah. You take the path of least resistance. So if I'm looking at the Ottawa technology and educational scene, I think we need to start beefing up our focus on the digital media, the creative side. there are people who say that that is the last bastion of good economic living for North America, to get into the creative side, to get into the digital media side, because that's something that can't be taken away and done offshore in a more cost-effective manner. And I think the citizens in Ottawa they get that, and they're starting to create the companies around that concept.
And it does require an inordinate amount of intellectual development, creativity, focus on how to create businesses and to monetize that, right? I mean,
that's right, and that's part of what we're doing with our Lead to Win program. And I met with some venture capitalists yesterday, and it was interesting when I explained to them, the venture capitalists, about the meltdown that had gone on in Ottawa with some of our larger companies, and the effect of its sort of creating all of these smaller companies. You could see their eyes starting to get quite bright.
Oh, yeah.
And they wanted to know how we were going to get into, how they were going to have access to these companies. And it's very, very easy to get access to those companies. www.ottawa.ca.
Just call 613-LARRY, right?
Yes, 1-800-Larry.
1-800-LARRY.
And I think, you know, and this is the beginning of a process that I'm starting from our city to go out and make you know, the venture capital community in the United States and other places in the world raise their awareness of the opportunities that there are for them here in the city of Ottawa, there in the city of Ottawa. So it's going to be quite an exciting period of time.
Yeah, and it is. And you know, the airlines fly there, so it's definitely an easy place to get to if you're a New York venture capitalist. Final question, the digital divide. We didn't get to talk about all the criteria, but you've got a rural population, you've got a good quality of life in those rural areas as well. You have sort of a balance. Any significant digital divide issues that you're tackling?
Not anymore.
Really?
We've solved, Ottawa has solved a lot of that problem. Now, Ottawa's 80% of our territory in the 1,000 square miles we have is rural. That's a lot of area to cover. And we now provide 99% broadband coverage to the rural areas. Even higher percentage of coverage in the rural areas than we do in the core of the city.
How'd you do that?
Well, we've entered into some contracts with some companies and subsidized the delivery of that services, and people can sign up for wireless broadband. And that really allows a lot more of our skilled staff to stay at home. The city is 50 miles wide,
right.
And although we don't have the huge traffic problems you have in some other major metropolitan cities, 50 miles is a long way to drive if you have to go to the office every day. So we're providing the opportunity for some of our knowledge workers to stay at home and be involved in you know, in their work and do their creative work in the comfort of their home.
Comfort of the country. That's a big problem to have licked. So you guys are in good shape. And
we feel pretty lucky and very positive about the balance of this century. When you're the mayor of a city, after public safety and safe water and you know, making sure the basic services are there, the next most important priority for me is the prosperity of the citizens in your community. And then we have a couple of tools that we can work with. One of them is our transportation system, and we're about to embark on a $2 billion transportation system in the city of Ottawa that will make it easier and greener for people to move around the city. Okay. And the secondly is the access to the broadband, access to the technologies that will enable them to grow and move. And I think we're covering both of those fairly neatly in the city of Ottawa right now.
Great time to be in Ottawa. Ladies and gentlemen, Mayor Larry O'Brien, Top 7 Ottawa.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Larry. Great job.
Thank you, Lou.
Thank you.